Hello, Wesley. I'm Rick Ivey. I'm the senior pastor here, and we are grateful that you've taken a second to watch this video. If you haven't already done so, then take a second to subscribe to our YouTube channel or to follow us on Facebook. And please, 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 please leave us a comment or a question to let us know that you are using this great technology to stay connected to your church, to your community, and to find ways in which to grow your faith. In this particular video, what I'm going to be doing is talking about a situation that you and I may find ourselves in. And in this particular case, I want you to think about the parts of your life you don't really think are free. You just don't really have a sense of freedom when it comes to maybe just life in general. But maybe there are other pieces as well. Maybe it is that you find yourself limited or held back because of something that you have done in your past. Or maybe you find yourself limited or held back because of a mistake that you made, or something you didn't do, or a decision that you made, or maybe you said the wrong thing to somebody. And you just find yourself not really prepared or ready for the next part of your life, whatever that might be. It could also be the case that when it comes to your understanding of who God is or how God interacts in your life, that you don't really have a idea or a notion that God could ever help you or that God would ever bring you out of your current situation. That maybe you just think that because of your health or your life or your economic situation or wherever you might be, that, well, this is it, and you're never going to get out of it. And I want to name that, and there's probably some other examples that we could think of, but I want to name it because one of the great things that we find about God is that God is able to deliver us and to bring us to new places, out of depression, out of anxiety, out of fear, out of doubt, out of a sense of boredom even. That God can do that. God can bring us out of those places. In the book of Leviticus, which is a 3,000-year-old book, there is a list after list, detail after detail, where God is giving people specific examples of how they can find freedom. And you might say, why was that so important? Well, the people that first heard the words of this book and then later read it, perhaps, were people who had been slaves in Egypt. They had been under the rule and the authority of Pharaoh in Egypt. Their lives really didn't matter. They probably never thought things were going to change. They didn't have a lot of hope for future generations or for their kids. And so when they were delivered out of Egypt, it was a whole new reality. And they needed guidance. They needed direction. They needed a way in which they could make sure that they were being kept free and that their kids would experience the same thing. Can we say that things are now perfect? No. But if you look back at the direction that God set, if you look at the way in which God was directing their lives, it's fascinating. And the verse that I want to read for you, you might not really think of as an important one to your life, but just let me bear with me for just a second. It says in Leviticus chapter 25, it says, when one of your fellow Israelites faces financial difficulty and must sell part of the family property, the closest relative will come and buy back what their fellow Israelite has sold. If the person doesn't have someone to buy it back, but then manages to afford buying it back, they must calculate the years since its sale and refund the balance to the person to whom they sold it. And it may seem a little bit of a reach, but in this particular passage, what they're talking about is property. Property that the landowner could no longer afford to keep up, and so they had to sell it to somebody else. They lost their property, they lost their land, which was probably meant they didn't have what they needed to be people who were farming and keeping livestock. And so in this particular case, what we find is God telling them that's not okay. God had set them free. God had given them land. God had given them the means by which they could take care of their lives and their family. And at this point, God is saying, well, here's what you can do. Here's how you can help others. And what had to happen was that the people who had lost their land, their property, their goods, they had to have somebody who would be called a kinsman redeemer. Kinsman redeemer, which meant somebody who was kin to them, somebody who was family, somebody who was a relative, would come and they would buy back the property that their family member had sold because of desperation or poverty or whatever choice that had come their way. And this kinsman redeemer was special because they would redeem the land, they would buy it back, and they would give it back to the person who had sold it. There's, in fact, a really powerful story in the Bible, in the book of Ruth. And Ruth has lost everything. She's lost her husband. She's lost a means to take care of herself. And she is finding herself out in a field, taking up the scraps from the field that's there because that was their right. And along comes somebody named Boaz. And Boaz finds out that Ruth is his family member, that they're related in some way, and eventually he becomes her kinsman redeemer. He pays the cost, he pays the price in order to give her new life. As a Christian people, we have a kinsman redeemer, and his name is Jesus. In Jesus, we have one who comes, who loves us so dearly, cares for us so much, that like a family member who will not give up on us, who will not forsake us, not neglect us, comes into our lives and redeems what it is in our lives that needs to be purchased. Maybe it is that we need someone that can pay the price for mistakes that we can't find our way out of. Maybe it is we have somebody who comes and redeems us from whatever emotional situation that we have found ourselves in that is keeping us from enjoying our lives. Or maybe we just need somebody that gives us some direction or some guidance on how to fix a relationship or how to save a marriage or how to make things better with somebody that we have harmed or hurt. But that in Jesus Christ we have one who is willing to go to the cross, pay the price for our salvation, and redeem us like a brother or a sister who cares for us dearly would do. I hope this brings you hope. I hope this gives you inspiration for the days to come. Once again, follow us on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube, and we'll see you next time. Amen.